right, we are recording. So again, my name is Robin Lane Jimenez, and I'm one of the assistant directors of parent engagement here at Elon. And a few housekeeping items before we begin. So the session today will be fully recorded, and the recording is posted on the Office of Parent Engagement website, as well as our YouTube channel. So we kindly ask that you keep yourself muted during the duration of the session. If you have any questions, feel free to use that Q&A feature on Zoom to enter your questions, and our lovely friends will help to answer and provide some more information. I have the pleasure of introducing James Holsinger, Executive Director of the KLC and Director of Learning Assistance, as well as Monica Isbell, Director of Academic Accommodations and Accessibility. We're also joined by Kathy Ziga, Director of Academic Advising, Brandy Probst, Director of Elon 1010, and Via Streeter, Student Success Coach. You might see some other names on the screen. We have Norma, Samantha, Casey, and Kenzie also here to help answer questions in the chat. So as you can see, we have representatives from all the departments of the Koenigsberger Learning Center today, and it's going to be a very informative session. So without further ado, I will turn things over to James.
Thanks, Robin. Yeah, Robin, who used to work in the KLC as a tutor, and she's back with us, which is nice. So, yeah, thanks everyone for being here. We're thinking about the end of the semester. We expect that you probably are thinking about the end of the semester for your students and making sure things finish on a strong note. So that's going to be the focus of our discussion today is how you can best support your student through the end of term. Robin was nice enough to do introductions. These are the folks that are will be speaking, going through some slides. As Robin mentioned, we also have some other KLC staff who are answering questions. So you can include questions in the chat as we go. The folks that are looking at those will also be trying to answer as many of those as possible. And then there'll be some time at the end if there are some things that are floating to the surface that we can address as well. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. What are we going to cover today? We'll first talk a little bit about the different resources in the KLC that your students have access to. After that, we'll move to a discussion of tips and strategies for how you can best support your students as we move through the final 3 weeks of the semester. And then, as I mentioned, we'll have time for questions and comments as well. So a quick synopsis of what the KLC is and the different units that make up the KLC. So we have three offices within the KLC. We have academic advising, and within that, another unit, which is Elon 1010. So you'll hear more about academic advising, what advisors do. You'll hear more about Elon 1010. The Office of Academic Accommodations and Accessibility, Monica will take you through that. And then I'll talk a little bit about learning assistance. But we just wanted to start first with like, what are the different units that make up the KLC? And those are here on the screen. We'll turn things over to Brandy first to talk about Elon 1010.
Hello, I'm Dr. Brandy Probst, Director of Elon 1010. In reference to Elon 1010, so we just had registration. The advising and registration period was April 16th through the 24th. So your students should have registered during that time frame. If your student is undeclared, then undeclared students were advised by their Elon 1010 instructor or advisor. If your students were declared students or have declared their major, then they would have been advised by their faculty advisor within their major department. For Elon 1010, of course, all first-year students took Elon 1010. However, if they did not declare their major, they could have stayed with their Elon 1010 instructor up until the end of their sophomore year. So if you have a first-year student or a sophomore who was not declared, then they would have worked with their Elon 1010 advisor. They would have had to been approved by their advisor to register for courses, which is why they needed to meet with them. And then we want you to make sure that you check with your student to make sure that they are registered for 16 credit hours. If they do 16 credit hours every semester, that will keep them on track to graduate in the 4-year window. However, I do want to reiterate that 12 credit hours equals full-time status, but we do encourage students to register for at least 16 credit hours. And then you can also encourage your students to review their My Progress. And My Progress is located in OnTrack. And they can review My Progress to make sure that the courses that they registered for fit within their plan and make sense with their graduation plan. Some other things to think about. So, of course, if your student is not declared, again, they're with their Elon 1010 instructor as their advisor, but students must declare by the beginning of their junior year. And so if your student is ready to declare and they have not done that yet, feel free to encourage them to do that. They can access the Elon Major Declaration Form via the Registrar's Office website. They can Google Elon Major Declaration Form and it will appear there, or they can go to the Registrar's Office website. Once they have completed that form to declare their major, and if they want to add a minor, they can do that as well on that form. Then they will be assigned an advisor after registration has ended. So the registrar's office will pick back up with assigning faculty advisors over the next 2 to 3 weeks, and they will receive an email when their faculty advisor has been assigned. A couple of other things we want you to remind your student to do is to encourage your student to be responsive and to utilize campus resources. So at the end of the semester, students are, wrapping up assignments and projects and looking at their grades, trying to figure out, what they need to do to maintain the grade they have or to increase their grade. And so if they have questions or if they need assistance, encourage them to reach out to their advisor about schedule questions, or if they have additional questions. Also encourage them to attend faculty office hours and inquire about their grades or their progress in the class or any assignments as we wrap up the spring semester. If students, hopefully they will not, but if students receive an e-warning, and an e-warning is our early alert system where faculty can submit an e-warning if a student is not doing well in a course. That e-warning goes to the student, as well as the advisor is copied on that email as well. However, if a student receives an e-warning, they should respond to their professor. So please encourage them to respond to their professor, meet with their professor to talk about the information that the professor shares in the e-warning. The advisor will also follow up with the student, but the student needs to take the initiative to speak with the professor directly. And then also encourage them to utilize campus resources. Meet with a success coach or a peer success coach. Although it's the end of the semester, it is still a good time if they need some additional assistance and additional support. They can still do that by meeting with a success coach or a peer success coach through learning assistance.
So thanks, Dr. Brandy. In terms of some of the things that might be going on for your students regarding advising, this is a time we're having a lot of conversations with students about taking summer classes. Summer registration is live through Elon right now, and the dates are posted here. I will note those are not the exact dates for students. The academic calendar has the dates where the students take their final exams for each class. That last date, July 1st and July 27th, respectively, is for the faculty to get grades in. So you can shave off a day or two there, just depending on if you've got travel plans with family and whatnot. Another big question that comes up is if I want to take a class elsewhere, how do I go through that process? Is really important that your students understand that they must complete a request to transfer credit form through the office of the registrar. The reason for this is our great colleagues in the registrar's office will check those courses at so-and-so institution and then let the student and the advisor know that that class is going to transfer in as expected or perhaps not as expected. So we want students to be able to really take advantage of those classes that they might take in the summer, that they're actually checking a box they were hoping for. And this process actually helps confirm that. If they don't do that, it is a risky step to take. So we've had some students who have not heeded this warning, and lo and behold, they did not finish the requirement that they thought they were going to do. And that certainly can be frustrating for students and their families. So that requested transfer credit form is super easy to fill out, super helpful, and our registrar's friends can help address any additional questions that might come that way. A couple notes, when those courses are finally completed, final transcripts should be sent directly to our friends in the office of the registrar, and students do need to earn at least a solid C or better. That is not a C minus, it has to be a solid C or better for it to transfer to Elon in the area that they were hoping. So again, this is a very common time of year. Students are trying to negotiate. Dr. Brandy mentioned if they're taking 16 credits every semester, they should be on track in 4 years to graduate from any program. At the same time, some of our students are really trying to get the best bang for their buck. They're maybe adding a minor, they're adding a major, they want to fit in a study away. They just want to give themselves a little buffer. Maybe there's a class that's not a strength that they want to take. in the summer. There's lots of good reasons to take a summer class. Most don't need to take a summer class. A lot of students do choose to take summer classes here and there. So this is a great time to have that conversation. Another area that we're talking with students about and helping them plan, first, second year students, and sometimes our juniors in terms of interpreting study away a little bit. We did have registration as Dr. Brandy just mentioned in the last couple of weeks. And so some of your students may have signed up for a fall prep seminar for a winter term study away program. And we do say study away because it could be a Study USA program or it could be study abroad. So study away captures all of those together. That fall prep seminar is a wonderful way to get to know the other students who are going to be traveling with you. It's led by the instructors who are also going to be leading that course and travel experience. Students get to learn about the culture that they're going to be taking part in, cultural norms that might be important, travel documents that they need, budget, and again, just a great way to get to know people before you end up traveling for 3 weeks together with students you might not have otherwise met. So it's a good way to build some community before heading out to wherever that destination might be. So you might also have some students who have waitlisted classes for a winter term. They got into a winter term they were okay with. They would love to get into the one that they were more thrilled with. Just make sure you're reminding them to check their email every single day if they waitlisted a class, because that's how they are notified if they got a spot. And they have to act within about 24 hours to accept that spot that they've been offered. So that applies to any course, but we know with winter term study away, that is extremely important for them to know. In terms of where we're at now in advising differences during the full semester study away, I wanted to note that in case we've got some families who are about to support a student who's going to study away next year as a junior, or possibly as a sophomore, the advising does happen a little differently while students are abroad. We do, as Dr. Brandy mentioned, they should be checking their My Progress right now, how their degree audit is progressing, because when they're away, they may not have a chance to meet with their current academic advisor. Time zones make issues there. They might be traveling for one reason or the other. So there are some advising differences. We do get a lot of questions in our office from students who are studying away via email usually. Again, that time difference makes a big difference for all of us. But they also tend to be approved to register for their upcoming semester of classes without having to meet with an advisor. It's the one time that happens during a student's academic journey at Elon. And again, it's just because of the time differences. But we want them to make sure that they're looking at the courses that they want to take, making sure things are checking boxes that they expected, and the like. Sophomores are preparing for that journey. And believe it or not, if they want to apply for fall 27 abroad, those applications will open mid-September to early October. The dates fluctuate, so I don't have them perfectly memorized, but they will be posted on the Global Education Center website. And for the early application period, those applications are actually due before Thanksgiving. So for students who want to go abroad in fall of 27 at more of the competitive locations like Florence or London, they really want to get that application in before Thanksgiving. For other programs that maybe are a little less competitive, there is a secondary period that they can apply as well. But a lot of our students do apply in that early action period. And if they're thinking about it for the spring of their junior year, so in spring of 2028, that application typically opens around Valentine's Day. There's a closing period, but then there's a secondary as well. And that secondary doesn't actually conclude until the early fall semester. So all these timelines are on the Global Education Center website, but we're noting them now because this is a planning period for a lot of our students. They've just wrapped up registration. Now they can check what they might want to take abroad. So with that in mind, our office does support grad plan meetings, whether you've got a student who's going to be a sophomore, junior, or senior. We do have students who want to check in, see where they're at, have these conversations. These are typically 1-hour appointments, so we can go through all of the nuts and bolts of their graduation plan, make sure I's are dotted, T's are going to be crossed. So our office does provide that supplemental advising. We do recommend still having a consult with their major advisor as often as possible for those major electives that are critical for their future career. But we can certainly make sure that they can fit the things in and make sure they check all the things off their individual Elon bucket list. So a little review of what we're working with students on now, and also what we'll be working with students on as they return in the fall semester.
Hello, all. I'm Monica Isbell, Director of AAA Office. And so a couple of reminders as we go into final exam prep. Students need to make sure that they've, one, completed the semester request. That semester request allows students to be able to, they're basically renewing their accommodations for the semester. Yes, we want students to do it early, but we do have students who wait, or students who are just newly approved. The other thing they need to do is once they do that semester request and we have approved it, they'll get an official accommodation letter they need to share with the professor and have a conversation. So if students wait and do not do this piece, then faculty are not obligated to provide the student their accommodations if the semester request and conversation has not occurred. Do not wait to schedule final exams. The deadline to schedule for spring final exams is tomorrow at 1 p.m. And what we tell students is to go ahead and schedule. If you need to cancel or need to change, we can do that. But you've already gotten a scheduled appointment, so we can make those arrangements. So we do not, after April the 29th, students who come in and walk in and say, can I book my final exams? It's too late. They will have to take it in the classroom without accommodations. If a student has submitted an accommodation request, be it new or supplemental, at this point, we will review it after final exams. And then some things to consider for summer. Supplemental requests. So if you're talking to your learner and they talk about having additional accommodation needs that they might need to address for the fall semester, they can do a supplemental request through their Accommodate portal to be able to for us to work with them and talk with them about additional accommodation needs they may have for the upcoming semester. The other thing too is, let's say they may need to look at a potential housing need, and then they can go through the supplemental accommodation request process too to submit for housing, dining, or ESA need in addition to academic. And the other thing, reminder for students to check their emails in early August. We will start sending out, typically after the first week in August, notification for students to go ahead and start submitting their semester requests to obtain their official accommodation letter for the fall semester. So we will see reminders throughout the month of August into September, but usually in August we start getting emails from students like, we haven't received anything yet. So just continue to remind them to check their email for those notifications.
All right, and then learning assistant. So we're not at the end of the semester yet, even though we're approaching it. So you'll see here the last day for tutoring is also the last day of classes, which is May 11th. So just to give you a sense for what we do in learning assistants, both for this semester, but also for future semesters. We are a College Reading and Learning Association CRLA certified tutoring program. We have peer tutors who have gone through CRLA certification, which is training with us. They've been recommended by an instructor and received at least an A or a B in the course. Everything that we talk about in learning assistance is at no additional cost to students. And students are allowed to book an appointment with someone up to twice a week per subject, including with peer success coaches. We have other resources that are more group resources as well that are listed here. So we run accountability groups throughout the academic semester. We offer student success consultations. So if your student needs help, but they're not really sure where to start, they can go to our website and book an appointment with myself or Norma Rodriguez or Sam Dunn, so professionals in the office. We'll meet with your student, get a sense for what's going on, and either connect them with one of our resources or perhaps also connect them with other resources on campus. So wanted to make sure we mention that. There are also many student resources available on our website that they can look at, so sort of self-service resources. So I would encourage you to look at our website. You can learn more about all of these things and get a sense for what your student has access to. The grid here at the bottom, I think, is helpful at showing you what we do and how we do it. So we try to be as accessible as possible for students for subject tutoring, peer success coaching, and these consultations. They can book in person, they can book online, and they have by appointment options for all three of those. We do also have drop-in for some subject areas. So for courses like calculus, statistics, accounting, courses where there might be more demand, they can go to our website, find times that a tutor is available, and just stop in. They do not need to make an appointment. They can come by. There may be other students in that session, and that's a good opportunity for them to hear questions from others and ask questions of their own. They can do that in addition to the two one-on-one appointments they have per week. And so I want to make sure that's clear is you're not choosing between those two options. They can choose all of the above, and we hope that they will. So again, we will be open through May 11th. If your student needs these resources, encourage them to seek them out now. Go ahead and book those appointments. We're in a crucial part of the semester. If your student's not a senior and returning, it would be helpful to maybe have a conversation with them about, do they plan to take advantage of these resources in the fall? Brandy and Kathy talked a lot about advising and the fact that your students should now have a course load. Have conversations with them about what courses they'll be taking in the upcoming fall and thinking about like what kind of support do we offer for those, particularly if they have any worries about those courses. All right, I'm going to turn things over to Vaya.
All right, so some important dates coming up that your students should know, but to make sure to check in on. Like was mentioned, classes end on May 11th, also the last day for tutoring. The final exams, making sure that they know when their exams are. They're not going to be the same day and time as their classes were. And that's really important when thinking about travel arrangements because they might have booked a flight that's on the 16th, but they have an exam on the 18th. So checking in, making sure that they've confirmed when are my exams, when can I actually leave campus? And then final grades and commencement shortly after the start of summer one sessions. And especially checking in on how those things lay out. So encouraging general things to do like at the start of the summer, encouraging their successes. They might have had some really hard classes, a lot of difficult things happening this semester. So acknowledge what they did well, where they've grown, and like being a coach. So the things that might need to follow up on or things that maybe they want to see improvements on, coach them through that, but not taking the wheel and being the one to reach out and follow up with questions, really encouraging them to take the lead there. As they're reflecting on this year and making plans for coming semesters, being supportive of their decisions, what classes they're exploring, majors and clubs, ways that they want to get involved, maybe even where they want to study abroad. If they're thinking London, but you're thinking Italy, really encouraging them to create their own experience, make their own decisions while still, having that bit of challenge where they need that. Um, and being aware of, their signs of burnout and being overwhelmed and making sure that they're taking care of themselves and, really finding that balance of, you're aiming for good grades, but are you sleeping enough? Are you eating enough? Are you actually creating a holistic routine that's feasible? So that they don't spend the entire summer recovering from burnout and then repeating the cycle in the fall. Again, referring them to campus resources as they might connect with us, they might connect with others, but making sure that you're at least aware of maybe who they're connected to or an office you can refer them back to get connected to all the other resources. And yet discussing their final grades and what worked well, what didn't, where do we want to improve, what do we need to do over the summer when you return in the fall to make improvements where necessary or to keep the momentum going. And I noticed one of the questions that came up was like, what is a success coach? So like as a professional, I do similar to what the peer success coaches do, but in a more like robust full-time thing. So it might be executive coaching, students who need help with managing their organization or their time management, or they say, I spend 5 hours studying for the class, but I don't process anything. So what are study skills? How can we improve that? For some students, it's really like week by week, we plan out a schedule to make sure they get things done. It's really a case by case basis, but just that more hands-on kind of intrusive support. So that might be a resource that you refer them to, even over the summer to say, start planning when you're going to meet with a success coach or planning to sign up for tutoring the first week of classes. So yeah, thinking about what resources there are, what they have used, what they haven't, and getting them to try new things and stay connected when they return.
Another piece of advice and information that we'd like to share with parents and family members is thinking about how you are reframing questions. So a lot of times we ask our students, I have a junior year in college, and so I learned very early, and my partner learned very early that if you ask a question that is a closed-ended question, that is all that he will give us. So we want you to think about how you ask questions to your student and how you can reframe those questions. So as an example, we typically will just ask, how are you doing in your classes? And they will say, good, fine. One word answers doesn't really give you a lot of information, right? So reframe that question and think about asking, what are you learning in your classes, or what strategies are you using to keep up with your assignments in your courses? That answer requires them to give you a little bit more than good, fine, so that you can then, have a deeper discussion about what they're learning, what their classes are like, what their courses are like. Another example is, have you had any challenges this semester? You typically are going to get, oh no, I'm good. And that's all you get, right? College is a challenge. There's things that students are experiencing. So instead of asking, have you had any challenges? Ask, what challenges are you having and what resources have you utilized to navigate the challenge, right? And so asking the question in a way that we know that there's some kind of a challenge, even if it's, I'm trying to figure out my sleep schedule, or I'm trying to figure out when to fit in a meal in between classes. Like, that's a challenge for some people. So it might be big or small, but asking that question in a better way. Another example, I'll skip to the last one. How were your midterm grades? Oh, they were good. Most of the time, students have not actually looked at their midterm grades, or they'll be like, what midterm grades, right? And so ask them, what were your midterm grades and where can you access them, right? So midterm grades were released around spring break time. And so students had access to their midterm grades. And so you can ask them, what were your midterm grades? Where can you access those grades? The same for final grades. Final grades will be released late May. And so students, you can ask them that as well, and ask them, where can you access it? And if you're like me, for my son, I don't just ask, where can you access it? I tell him to access it so that I can see it, so that we can look at grades together, so we can talk about these grades together, and talk about what are some things you learned from the semester, so that maybe you can do things a little bit differently. The other point that I'd like to kind of emphasize here is not only reframing the questions that you ask, but also reframing your response to the answer as well. A lot of times students will call and they will vent, or they will have a moment of, they might be upset, they might have a mini crisis. And a lot of times as parent and family members, we want to solve the crisis for them, and we want to call the university for them, and we want to call tutoring and call academic advising for them. So we're doing this webinar so that we can equip you with the resources to share with your student. So if they call and they have a question, or if they call and they're not sure who to talk to or where to go, we want you to say, well, how about you call academic advising, or how about you walk over to their office? I was in a webinar and they said you can go make this grad plan appointment. Or how about you go talk to Miss Isbell and her staff in academic accommodations and accessibility if you have questions about how you schedule your exam, right? And so like we said earlier in the webinar, we want you to be a coach, not a proxy. So think about how you're reframing your answers, and how we are helping you help your student, because they are here with us on campus, and you are probably somewhere in Boston or California, or you might even be down the street in Durham or Greensboro, but your student is on campus with us. And so we want to be able to help them in the moment. So please send them to our office, or encourage them to contact us if they need assistance.
Yeah, so to Brandy's point, so they're here with us, and there are lots of resources on campus to help them manage stress, manage disruptions, which tend to, I think, be accentuated at the end of the academic year, which is where we are right now. Just some additional reminders as we close things out. One, your student has an advisor, and that advisor is available to them to help locate an appropriate resource. So if they need some help, but they're not sure where to start, the advisor is a great person to go to. Explain the situation. The advisor is going to have an answer to help connect them with someone. They may want to talk, about things like withdrawal. So course withdrawals, the deadline has passed. That was April 10th. That was the last day to withdraw from the course with a W. Medical withdrawals, there's a May 4th deadline for that. If a student has had, some disruptions this semester due to a medical condition, There's a process for that. It's handled through the Dean of Students office. If you Google medical withdrawal Elon, you'll find the website. It's very clear. It takes you through the process of what would be needed for that. Again, we hope that's not the case, but this is the time of year when we're often having discussions with students about a medical withdrawal. Exam absence and rescheduling policies. So the Office of the Registrar have clear policies on handling final exams, such as if a student has three or more final exams on a day, they can basically petition to have one of those rescheduled. There are lots of other reasons that a student might like to reschedule their final exams, but that's not really the way that we do things. So communicating your travel plans is really important. We often see a couple students every semester who say, like, I can't take my final exam on that Wednesday because my flight is on Tuesday. A great thing for you to do if you're helping your student make plans for traveling home at the end of the semester is to make sure that those travel plans include a discussion of when those final exams are and making sure that that flight is not happening on the same day of a final exam because that's very disruptive to a student. It makes it difficult for them. I think that it provides some unnecessary stress, and we can maybe be proactive and hit that off from the start. A few more quick things. There are lots of final exam week programming their students has access to. So we're doing things in the library. There's events in residence halls and neighborhoods. So that's a week that can be stressful for students. There's a lot going on. They're preparing, they're studying, but we also want to make sure they're doing some fun things and there'll be some things available to them. So, Brandy went through some questions to ask them. You could ask them, like, what are you doing that week other than just studying and preparing for your final exams? Self-care, there's several options here. We have botanical gardens. They could visit Turner Theater. We have an aromatherapy room. I think you could ask questions about what they plan to do, particularly that week and in the week leading up to it, to make sure that there's some balance in their life. Our counseling center is open. They can meet with a counselor. They also have access to timely care, which is basically like virtual counseling that every student has access to if they're having mental health challenges or want to speak with someone. So there are resources available to them. And sometimes all it takes is a parent asking a question or directing them in that way, and it's really helpful to them. The last thing I wanted to end on is just a quick description of a FERPA waiver. So FERPA, the Federal Education Rights and Privacy Act, the quickest way to describe this is just that your student as an adult owns their own educational record. And if they do not have a FERPA waiver on file, which would allow us to talk to you, there's very little that we can share with you. If your student does want us to be able to speak with you about their academic record, it's very easy. They go to the registrar's website, they complete a FERPA waiver where they basically name the people that they want information to be shared with. If they've done that and you reach out to someone that's on this panel, it's much easier for us to tell you what we know. So if they are struggling in a class, or if we can see that an instructor has submitted e-warnings for them, or we have concerns about their attendance, with a FERPA waiver on file, we can tell you that. Without it, we can talk generally about processes and procedures, but we can't share anything specific to your student. And I would also note that that FERPA waiver is revocable at any time. So your student, as an adult, they're allowed to fill out the FERPA waiver. They're also allowed to revoke it. So we look in real time. If someone makes an appointment to talk with me about their student, the thing that I'm doing right before that meeting is logging in to make sure that we have a FERPA waiver, seeing if we do or don't, and then using that to determine what I can share. So just wanted to make sure that was clear as we enter these last couple weeks as well, so that if you do want to have a conversation about your student and their academic progress or academic challenges they may have a conversation with your student about the FERPA waiver, because again, it is up to the student. You do not have the ability to fill that out. The student has to fill that out. All right. We have time for additional questions. I saw lots of good questions came through in the chat, and it looks like most of those were answered. Maybe we'll open it up. Those that were answering questions, was there anything that you wanted to pose to us? Maybe not.
Yes, we saw quite a few questions come through. So if there are any remaining questions, feel free to pop them on into that Q&A feature of Zoom, because we will have some time here now to go ahead and answer questions live. So if there's anything that is still on your mind to have some more information about, please do ask.
I would say quickly too, Robin, just while
Yeah.
we're doing that, on the right side of your screen, you can scan that QR code. That will take you to the KLC webpage where you'll be able to then drill down into the different units and find out more about what we've talked about today. And the bottom left, there's a different QR code if you want to follow us on Instagram. It's a good way to keep track of events that we're having. We do things like celebrating people that work within the KLC, student employees. So that's worth checking out too if you're on Instagram. There's a question here from Christine Barkley. Is there any downside to having them complete a FERPA? I don't think so. I mean, completing the FERPA just means that you can ask questions that we can then provide answers to. So I don't really see a downside. I don't know if anyone else would want to weigh in and think of a downside for that, but I think it's up to the student. They're basically saying you can share information.
No, I think the only thing that I would add is that if they complete it, they can also remove you. So I think being mindful of that, but other than that, there's not a downside, I guess you can say. But they can complete it and then take you off at any point in time. But
And I have just a tidbit here because I've been asked a few questions about FERPA forms and the process to get academic information. So really the only thing that I'd like to highlight is be sure to be clear with your student about which email they're putting down on that FERPA form, because you'll need to use that email directly to request academic records. So just be clear about which email you want on that form.
Yeah, and just a reminder, because the question came in, that FERPA form lives on the Office of the Registrar's website. So if you Google FERPA Elon Registrar, it'll be the first hit and it'll take you right there. There'll also be some other information about FERPA there that you can read for a more full description. Let's see. Got some.
Maybe I'll highlight Kelly's question here, Casey. I know you're answering it. Will students require accommodations able to register for classes earlier to ensure the type of class they are best for their learning style that they will get into and not filled up beforehand? It's a good question to answer live here for folks.
So priority registration is considered an accommodation. So if a student has a need around potentially being able to register early for classes, and when I say register early, it doesn't change the day, it changes the time. They would keep the same registration date, their time would be different. That is an accommodation request that students would have to complete and meet with one of the accommodation specialists to discuss their needs.
Thank you, Monica. Vaya, I know you're answering this question too, but would love to highlight it as a success coach here. So how can students get access to a success coach?
Yes, so some students will get direct emails that encourage them to schedule with either myself or our other success coach. I'm also this semester doing drop-in hours in the KLC, so we've been publishing that, and we'll see what that looks like in the fall, and advertise that through likely the Elon 1010 classes and all of the different TVs with all the flyers and posters and all those things. And there's just a link where they can schedule with myself or someone else in the office. And, um, once we've met and established that this is a good fit to meet their needs, we just figure out how often would they like to meet. There's some students I meet with twice a week, some once a week, some every month. They really will depend on their needs and how much availability we have. But yeah, it should be super simple once they are in contact with us.
And how wonderful that you can kind of cater that to the needs of the student, whether it's weekly or monthly. It's wonderful. I just want to highlight this question about Healthy You courses because that's a newer addition to our course registration offerings. So there will likely not be additional sections of those Healthy You classes offered come this fall. But as we start to kind of see what classes are most popular filling up, it's possible that additional sections will be added to Healthy You classes in additional semesters. So definitely express your interest. Hope your students are taking advantage of those Healthy You classes because there are quite a range of topics from making bread to meditation to tennis. So, there is really something for everyone there, which is really fun. There are any other questions that are on your mind, feel free to add them to the chat. This Q&A. There was just a question about the timeline for submitting accommodations for an incoming freshman or first year, and when they might hear back about accommodations. Do we want to just touch
Yes,
on that
I can
process
touch
a
on
little?
that. So, students who are submitting accommodation requests that are incoming, we will communicate with them when the request comes in to let them know if the request is complete, meaning that we have all documentation that's needed, or incomplete. And so we will communicate back and start our next round of intake meetings with students in June. A couple of deadlines to remember, and they're on our website. I'm going to try to remember off the top of my head. So if a student is submitting for an academic accommodation, they need to make sure that, and they want it to have it reviewed before we start the fall semester, they need to make sure they have that submitted to us by July the 15th. And what I mean by submitted, they have done their intake form along with submitted the appropriate documentation to support the request, June the 15th by 12 noon. If a student is going to need a housing or ESA accommodation, the last day to submit for it to be reviewed for the fall semester is July the 30th at 12 noon. July 31st at 12 noon, excuse me. We
Fantastic.
will continue to review accommodation requests throughout the entire summer and fall semester if students don't meet those deadlines, but we like to provide that deadline information.
And Casey was nice enough to drop the link into the chat, so you can go read all those dates and have access to those.
Yes, fantastic. And follow-up question to that is, do they have to resubmit each year? I know Casey's so quick to answer that one as well, but I want to highlight that as well, that piece of information.
Resubmit as far as documentation?
Yes.
No, a student does not have to resubmit documentation. They do have to do a semester request each semester for an official accommodation letter. If there has been a change to their disability, impact has changed, there's a need for additional accommodations, then the student will do a supplemental request if there's needs there.
Fantastic. Great to keep that in mind. All right. Well, it seems like our questions are slowing down here. So I will just say an immense thank you to all of the folks that joined us here today to provide such comprehensive and wonderful information for our parents and families. If there are continued questions or something comes up in an hour from now, what's the best way for parents to contact with follow-up questions?
Yeah, so if you go to if you scan the QR code there and go to the KLC, if you have a question about one of the specific units, so if you have a question about accommodations, it'll take you to that website, so like accommodations@elon.edu. If you have general questions or you're not sure where it should be directed within the KLC, please email me directly. My information's on the website. It's my last name, Holsinger@elon.edu, and I'll make sure and direct it in the most appropriate way.
Fantastic. And just a reminder that the Office of Parent Engagement is also always here for you. If you truly don't know the best place to go, who to ask, we are always here to help lead you in the right direction. So everyone here at Elon is here to support you in supporting your student. So thank you all so much again for your time today. And really, really appreciate it. Hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your Tuesday. And thank you all so much again.